Hello everyone, I hope you all are fine and healthy. We are reading chapter number 12, Reproduction in Plants. Today we will learn about pollination and fertilization. When a male gamete that is present in the pollen grains combines with the female gamete that is present in the ovule, it forms a new seed, and this process occurs in two steps, that is pollination and fertilization. For the male gamete to be able to combine with the female gamete, it is necessary that the pollen grain should be transferred from the anther to the stigma. The transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a stamen to the stigma of a pistil, it is known as pollination. Pollination means transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a stamen to the stigma of pistil. Now the pollination can occur in two ways, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. When the pollen grains from the anther of a flower are transferred to the stigma of the same flower or the another flower on the same plant, it is known as self-pollination. When the pollen grains are transferred from the anther of a flower on one plant to the stigma of a flower on the another plant, it is known as cross-pollination. So in self-pollination, the pollination occurs in the same flower or in the same plant, whereas in the cross-pollination, the pollination occurs between two plants. Pollination is done by insects, wind and water, and they are known as pollination agents. When an insect sits on a flower for sucking the nectar, then the pollen grains from the anther sticks to its body, and when this insect sits on the another flower for sucking the nectar, then the pollen grains that are sticking on its body, they are transferred to the stigma of the second flower. In this way, the insects transfer pollen grains from flower to flower and carry out pollination. The insects' pollinated flowers have large and scented petals, as well as they have nectar to attract the insects. Examples of flowers that are pollinated by insects are sunflower, jasmine, banana, marigold, etc. The blowing wind carries pollen grains from flower to flower and helps in the pollination, and the flowers which are pollinated by the winds, they have anther that hang outside the flower. Example of flowers that are pollinated by wind are grass, maize, bamboo, sugarcane, rice, etc. The pollination in aquatic plants is done by water. Since the pollen grains are light in weight, so they can be easily transferred from one flower to another flower. And the example of plant in which the pollination is carried by water is hydrilla. After a pollen grain falls on the stigma, then the next step is fertilization, the process in which the male gamete that is present in the pollen grain fuses with the female gamete that is present in the ovule to form a new cell that is called zygote, is known as fertilization. Or we can say that the fusion of male gamete with the female gamete to form zygote is known as fertilization. When a pollen grain falls on the stigma, then the pollen grain grows a pollen tube downwards through the style towards the female gametes in the ovary. A male gamete moves down the pollen tube and enters the ovule in the ovary. In ovary, the male gamete that is present in the pollen combines with the female gamete that is present in the ovule to form a fertilized egg cell that is called zygote. So the formation of zygote takes place in the ovary. Then the zygote develops into an embryo. Embryo is the part of a seed which develops into a new plant. And embryo is a kind of dormant plant, or we can say a plant that is in its inactive state. After fertilization, the ovule that is present in the ovary, it grows into a seed. The seed contains baby plant, or we can say it contains embryo and food for growing seed. The seed contains embryo. Embryo means the baby plant, and the seed also contains food for growing a new plant. There is a tough protective covering around the seed to protect it, and this covering is known as seed coat. After fertilization, the ovary of a flower develops into a fruit with the seeds inside it. So fruit is the ripened ovary of a flower. Apples, oranges, mango, they all have seeds inside it. Now we will learn about dispersal of seeds and fruits. Dispersal of seeds means to scatter seeds over a wide area. The seeds of some plants disperse as such, but the seeds of other plants disperse in the form of fruits. If all the seeds produced by a plant will fall at one place, then a large number of new plants will grow close together in a small area of soil. The large number of plants growing together will compete with each other for water, sunlight and minerals. They will not be able to grow properly, and many of those plants will die. To prevent the overcrowding, the seeds and fruits of many plants are adapted for the dispersal. When the seeds are dispersed, then the new plants grow far away from each other. Seeds of the plants are dispersed by wind, water or animals. The seeds of various plants have some special features in them due to which they can be easily carried away by the wind, water or animals. The seeds and fruits that are dispersed by wind, they have wing-like structures over their body, or they have hair over them, or they are very small and light in weight. Example is drumstick, maple, madar, sunflower, cotton, etc. The seeds and fruits of some plants are dispersed by water, and the seeds or the fruits that are dispersed by water, they have developed floating ability in them in the form of spongy or fibrous outer coats. The seeds of water lily and coconut, they are dispersed by the water. Some fruits develop hook on their surface, due to which they get attached with the hairy body of the animals and they are carried to a large distance. Example is xanthium and urena. When the fruits are dispersed by an animal, then the seeds inside them are automatically dispersed. Some seeds are also dispersed by an explosive mechanism, in which the ripe fruits of the plants, they burst on their own by making small explosions and they throw the seeds out. Example is castor and balsam. So that's it, students. Now our chapter is over. We will start our new chapter in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye. Take care.